Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Welcome to episode 544 of Cannabis Common Sense. We have a great show for you tonight. Mr. Tim Pate and Mr. Brian Whitecloud are here. How are you, gentlemen?
I'm doing really good. How are you, Brian?
Fantastic. Thank you for having me.
They're going to be playing some music here in a little bit. We've got another extensive hemp news segment. There have been a lot of interesting stories out there this week. And we have some film clips we'll be playing from the British film The Magic Weed, and a little promo for that movie out there, The Green Goddess, that will come out one of these days. But before that, we'll bring out our infamous dancing cannabis leaves. Okay, our first news story tonight is from the New York Times out of Denver. The Department of Veterans Affairs will formally allow patients treated at its hospitals and clinics to use medical marijuana in states where it is legal, a policy clarification that veterans have sought for several years. A Veterans Administration directive expected to take effect next week resolves the conflict in veterans facilities between federal law, which outlaws marijuana, and the 14 states that allow medicinal use of the drug, effectively deferring to the states. The policy will not permit department doctors to recommend or prescribe marijuana, but it will address the concerns of many patients who use it. They could lose access to their prescription pain medication if caught. Such fears led many patients to distrust their doctors, veterans say. With doctors and patients pressing the Veterans Department for formal guidance, agency officials began drafting a policy this fall. According to Dr. Robert Jesse, the Principal Deputy Undersecretary for Health in the Veterans Department, quote, "When states start legalizing marijuana, we're put in a bit of a unique position because as a federal agency, we're beholden to federal law," end quote. At the same time, Dr. Jesse said, quote, "We didn't want patients who were legally using marijuana to be administratively denied access to pain management programs," end quote. The new policy applies only to veterans using medical marijuana in states where it's legal. Doctors may still modify a veteran's treatment plan if the veteran is using marijuana or decide not to prescribe pain medicine altogether if there's a risk of drug interaction. But that decision will be made on a case-by-case basis, not as a blanket policy, Dr. Jesse said. Though veterans of the Vietnam War were the first group to use marijuana widely for medical purposes, the population of veterans using it now spans generations, said Michael Krawitz, Executive Director of Veterans for Medical Marijuana Access, which worked with the Veterans Department on formulating a policy. Veterans, some of whom have been at the forefront of the medical marijuana movement, praised the new policy. They said cannabis helps soothe physical and psychological pain and can alleviate the side effects of some treatments. According to Mr. Kravitz, he says, quote, "By creating a directive on medical marijuana, the VA ensures that throughout its vast hospital network, it will be well understood that legal medical marijuana use will not be a basis for denial of services," end quote. Many clinicians already prescribe pain medication to veterans who use medical marijuana for pain management, as there was no rule explicitly prohibiting them from doing so despite the federal marijuana laws. Advocates of medical marijuana use say that in the past, the patchwork of veterans' hospitals and clinics around the country were sometimes unclear how to deal with veterans who needed pain medications and were legally using medical marijuana. The department's emphasis on keeping patients off illegal drugs and from abusing their medication gave many practitioners the feeling that they are supposed to police marijuana out of the system. According to Mr. Kravitz, he said, quote, "Many medical marijuana using veterans have just abandoned the VA hospital system completely for this reason, and others that stay in the system feel that they're not able to trust their doctor will be working in their best interests," end quote. In rare cases, veterans have been told that they need to stop using marijuana even if it is legal or risk losing their prescription medicine. David Fox, who's 58 years old, an Army veteran from Pompey's Pillar in Montana, uses medical marijuana legally to help quiet the pain he experiences from neuropathy, a nerve disorder. Buddy said he was told this year by the medical staff at a veterans clinic in Billings that if he didn't stop using marijuana, he'd no longer get the pain medication he was also prescribed. A letter written to Mr. Fox in April from Robin Corrigie, the director of the Veterans Healthcare System in Montana, explained that the department did not want to prescribe pain medicine in combination with marijuana because there's no evidence that marijuana worked for non-cancer patients and because the combination was unsafe. According to Ms. Corrigie, she wrote, quote, "In those states where medical marijuana is legal, the patient will need to make a choice as to which medication they choose to use for their chronic pain. However, it's not medically appropriate to expect the VA physician will prescribe narcotics while the patient's taking marijuana," end quote. Mr. Fox, of course, was shocked by that decision, he said. He said, quote, "I felt literally abandoned. I still needed my pain meds. I thought they were supposed to treat you. It was devastating for me," end quote. Mr. Fox, who said at one point he was weaning himself off the pain medication for fear of running out, has held one-man protests in front of the clinic, carrying signs that read, "Abandoned by VA, refuse treatment." Veterans officials did not comment on specific cases, citing medical privacy laws. And that's an excerpt from last week's newspaper. Our next story is from the Los Angeles Times, out of Oakland, California. Oakland City Council on Tuesday approved an ordinance that could make it the first city in the state to permit industrial marijuana production, a path-breaking decision that could spur the commercialization of a crop largely hidden in grow homes and gardens. The plan would authorize 4 potentially enormous cannabis factories, but it makes no provision for the hundreds of growers who now supply Oakland's 4 dispensaries, which sold $28 million in marijuana last year in Oakland alone. The council, however, promised it would develop a plan for these growers before permits are awarded next year for the 4 large-scale marijuana operations. According to Dale Garinger, an Oakland resident and longtime head of California NORML, which backs the legalization of marijuana, he says, quote, "This is a monumental step forward. It really means moving into an era of industrial scale operations, and Oakland means to do it big," end quote. The 5-2 vote came after 2 hours of testy debate between pot growers who argued the proposal could destroy their livelihoods and businessmen who said it could turn Oakland into the Silicon Valley of cannabis and create jobs and generate new tax revenues. The audience booed, hissed, and talked back, causing City Council President Jane Bruner to repeatedly admonish the crowd. Steve D'Angelo, formerly of Washington, D.C., who worked with National NORML and now runs the Harborside Health Center in Oakland, California, the city's largest dispensary, led a campaign to urge the council to accommodate these growers in the ordinance. D'Angelo said, quote, "These growers are not anonymous miscreants burning down houses and bringing crime to neighborhood," end quote, said D'Angelo, who buys marijuana from more than 400 different growers. He says, quote, "They're real people, decent people with families to support," end quote. Jeff Wilcox, a businessman who's presented the most detailed plan for a marijuana factory, warned the council that if it did not act quickly, it would lose the momentum to other cities, such as Berkeley, which plans to ask voters to approve 6 large commercial-scale operations. Wilcox said, quote, "You've got an issue here. You're late," end quote. The proposal has ignited contentious debate in Oakland over whether the city should be in the business of deciding who gets to be a marijuana mogul. The annual permit fee would be $211,000, a high barrier for small growers. Many fear that after years of risking federal prosecution, they'll be shut out just as Oakland seeks to legitimize cannabis cultivation. But City Council members Rebecca Kaplan and Larry Reed of the Oakland City Council, who drafted the proposal, want the city to exert more control over cultivation, including setting up a city staff that would routinely inspect the 4 operations. In fact, Rebecca Kaplan's office is actually located in the university that Richard Lee owns, the Oaksterdam University. They said that this could eliminate robberies and fires caused by faultily wired grow houses and excessive use of pesticide. Bringing what's been a secretive and lucrative cash business into the open would also allow Oakland to tax it, potentially adding millions of dollars to its ailing budget. The city, which has led the state in its innovative approach to cannabis, was the first to adopt a cannabis tax, which is 1.8%, but is considering asking voters to approve a substantial increase. Oakland keeps a list of people who expressed interest in the permits. On Tuesday afternoon, Arturo Sanchez, who oversees the city's marijuana regulations, said it had 192 names and applications. But as much of the attention is focused on just a few successful businessmen who've been vocal about their plans and their intent to win permits, they have money, buildings, proposals, and a ready access to the city council members, but only recently became interested in medical marijuana. Wilcox, a retired construction firm owner, wants to convert a complex of aging industrial buildings that he owns along Interstate 880 into what could be the world's largest cannabis factory, raising about 58 pounds of marijuana a day, more than enough to handle Oakland's consumption. Two other entrepreneurs, Dar Mann and Derek Peterson, partners in a hydroponic grow store called iGrow, have a team already working on designs for a multi-level operation in a 57,000 square foot warehouse that they have an option to lease. Peterson said they have no doubt that their proposal would win a permit. This story is from the Los Angeles Times from yesterday, the 22nd of July 2010, written by Joel Hoffel of the Los Angeles Times. Our next story is right from the Sunday edition of the Wall Street Journal. For 3 months until last week, marijuana dealers had something they could only dream about before, the apparent stamp of approval of a federal agency. On April 1st, quite an ironic day, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office created a new trademark category, quote, processed plant matter for medicinal purposes, namely medical marijuana. The Patent Office, part of the Department of Commerce, posted the new category on its website. The Patent Office chain set off a land rush by cannabis dealers in the 14 states where laws permit medical marijuana sales. Some stake claims to the rights of long-used names like Maui Wowie and Chronic. Others applied to trademark business names such as Bud Trader and Pot Inn. Two companies applied to trademark psychoactive sodas named Keef Cola and Canna Cola. According to Steve D'Angelo, the executive director of Harborside Health, he said, quote, it looked to me like a positive step. We don't have many steps by the federal government legitimizing medical marijuana, end quote. D'Angelo hired an intellectual property lawyer to trademark his company name before the Patent Office created the new trademark category. Last week, the Patent Office snuffed out the promise of federal recognition. On Tuesday, after questions about the new cannabis trademark category from a Wall Street Journal reporter, the Patent Office spokesman said the office planned to remove the new cannabis classification by the week's end, and the category is now off the website. A spokesman for the Patent Office, Peter Pappas, said the office's lawyers were, quote, aware of the category weeks ago. It raises examination issues, Mr. Pappas said. Quote, it was a mistake and we have removed it. Again, this is a story from the Wall Street Journal. From Ann Arbor, Michigan, lifetime use of marijuana is rarely associated with emergency room visits, according to an analysis of epidemiological survey data published online by the American Journal of Emergency Medicine. Investigators at the University of Michigan reviewed the overall prevalence of drug-related emergency room visits among lifetime users of illicit substances. The researchers analyzed data from the National Epidemiological Review on Alcohol and Related Conditions, which is a nationally representative survey of 43,093 residents age 18 or older. The study is the first to use nationally representative data to examine patterns and correlates of drug-related emergency room visits. Among those surveyed, subjects that reported using cannabis were the least likely to report an emergency room visit, or just 1.71%. The respondents who reported lifetime use of heroin, tranquilizer, and inhalants were the most likely at 18.5%, 6.3%, and 6.2% respectively to report experiencing one or more emergency room visits related to their drug use. The investigators concluded, quote, marijuana was by far the most commonly used illicit drug, but individuals who'd used marijuana had a low prevalence of drug-related emergency room visits, end quote. A 2009 Swiss study published in the journal BMC Public Health previously reported that the use of cannabis was inversely associated with injuries requiring hospitalization. A prior case control study conducted by the University of Missouri also reported an inverse relationship between marijuana use and injury risk. The finding, quote, self-reported marijuana use in the previous 7 days was associated with a substantially decreased risk of injury, end quote. These findings belie the myth that adult marijuana use is a primary cause of hospitalization or emergency room visits. The reality is that few, if any, therapeutic or psychoactive substances possess a safety profile comparable to cannabis. The full text of this study, Patterns and Correlates of Drug-Related Emergency Room Visits, results from a national survey, will appear in the American Journal of Emergency Medicine. Our last story tonight is from right here in Oregon. Election officials last Friday affirmed that proponents of a statewide ballot measure to allow authorized patients to legally obtain medical cannabis from state-licensed facilities has qualified for the 2010 November vote. Under the proposed measure, private facilities would be able to obtain permits to engage in the production and not-for-profit distribution of marijuana for medical purposes. Both dispensaries and private producers would be subject to inspection and auditing by the health department. Dispensaries will not be allowed to operate within 1,000 feet of any school or within a residential neighborhood. The ballot measure is sponsored by Voter Power and the Coalition for Patient Rights. Oregon voters initially legalized the physician-authorized use of marijuana in 1998, ballot measure 67. Patients may grow their own marijuana under the law or designate a caregiver to cultivate for them. There will also be statewide votes this fall in Arizona and South Dakota for medical marijuana, to authorize that there in those two states, and in California to completely legalize the possession of less than 1 ounce of marijuana and allow cities and county governments to regulate the legal sale of marijuana to adults. It's an exciting Proposition 19 in California. That's the end of our Hemp News segment tonight. We're going to pop over to Mr. Tim Pate and Brian Whitecloud.
Now, you were telling me just a few minutes ago in that news story that apparently all those years we were taking safety breaks. We really were taking safety breaks. In other words, it was safer to smoke marijuana than it was not to smoke marijuana, according to the emergency room visits.
I guess so.
I guess so. So the safety
I'm not
break
sure if
was-
that's exactly what they said. They just said that marijuana had the lowest correlate use. But whether you were safer, well, it definitely protects your brain. So if you had some kind of trauma or stroke or something, it would help and extend your life. You know, it's so useful in so many ways. So
Well, I do feel safer. Let me just say that.
Right. Well, you know, it's a lot safer than alcohol. We know that.
That's true.
And so it's definitely misleading people into thinking that alcohol is not as bad as marijuana, and that's a big mistake.
That is a big mistake. Brian's got a song for us tonight, so I'm going to let him
All
play.
right.
I'm going to try and join him along.
Brian Whitecloud.
You bet.
Burning the sweet grass and the sage, welcoming the day as the children play, dancing in circles to the sun, and all of us are one. The human tribe, we cannot be undone. Drums like thunder in the breeze, bringing me to my knees in the shadows of the tall trees. Whispers and sounds of laughter, we can only see now, not after. We cannot see tomorrow. I'm gonna dream me a dream. I'm gonna take it to the sky. Do not fear or cry. I will take away your sorrow. When the whole damn world comes crashing down, we'll just fly away. Fly away. Whispers and sounds of laughter. Whispers and sounds of laughter. Whispers and sounds of laughter. We can only see now, not after. We cannot see tomorrow. But I'm gonna dream me a dream. I'm gonna take it to the sky. Do not fear or cry. I will take away your sorrow. When the whole damn world comes crashing down, we'll just fly away.
That's great. Really like that. Brian Whitecloud, Mr. Tim Pate. I'd like to introduce a guest tonight, Sarah Taylor. Sarah, you've got a new book out there. It's Pro Se Warrior. Pro se being a person who represents himself in court. And so When did this book come out, Sarah?
Well, it is coming out right now. You're the first to hear about it on television. And it was just finished a couple of weeks ago. Took thousands of dollars and thousands of hours.
Yeah, things often do if they're worth any time. Let me
Right.
go ahead and just see it for just a moment. I'll show our viewers out there, maybe get a camera to close in on it. We'll be coming back to talk to Sarah a little bit more here in just a minute, but we have a caller who's been standing by, and we'll go ahead and take a phone call. Hello, caller. Welcome to the show. Hello, caller.
Yeah,
How are you tonight?
just fine.
Good. So there's that book. We'll be talking to Sarah a little bit more here later. How are you, so you have a question for us?
Yeah, I do. I was wondering what's going on with the law in the western states here. I'm a terminally ill man with Parkinson's disease, liver disease. I cannot be expected to do the strenuous work necessary to produce my own medicine, and I'm wondering how an individual like myself is going to eat and get the medicine necessary to carry on a decent day.
That's a good question. You know, there are more and more places springing up around town that are set here to help patients. So there are new places out on Foster, out in Tigard, on 82nd, more of them springing up. And then we have a ballot measure to vote on this November that will set up a lot more of them. And they'll be regulated and audited and inspected by the health department to make certain that they're producing quality cannabis with no pesticides or dangerous additives or harmful insects. So
it's actually going to
even though it's still somewhat difficult, especially if you can't grow your own and you don't have anyone you know who can help you grow it for you, there are more and more options out there every day.
Well, I would sure like to learn of those options. I tried through THCF and had a very kind man donate some medicine to me and donate a cutting or two, but the cuttings were infested with spider mites. And
that's a dangerous thing at this time of year. They just float around in the air on little strings, and
you know, I was just curious if things are going to change, or if THCF maybe has a program for terminally ill people that they can assist us with getting our medicine.
You know, at this time, we take care of a limited number of patients and give medicine as we can, given a limited supply. Nothing like that garden I was reading about that they're planning in California that would produce 58 pounds a day. Nothing anywhere near that. But, you know, we do what we can, but there are a bunch of different options out there. And so I would just recommend staying in touch, trying to get some word on those options. We're trying to get the people who answer our telephones aware of all the options. Things are changing. It's a very dynamic marketplace right now. And a lot of things are happening on political and economic levels. And one of the most exciting things is, you know, the ballot measure we're going to vote on this fall. So thanks for your call and your question, though. I wish you the best, and just stay in touch. You know, you can call our office at 503-235-4606. That's one way to get through. There's a toll-free number for people who are outside of the Portland area, and obviously we can barely help a few patients here in the Portland, Oregon area, no less nationwide when it comes to that. So the only thing we're able to help patients on a nationwide basis with is having a network and team of doctors that we can refer you to if you need a permit. And so that's one of the things we specialized in 9 states across the country. Thanks for that question. Now, if you have a call out there tonight, you can call us at 503-288-4448. That's 503-288-4448. We're also streaming out on the internet, and so if you have a question on the internet and you're watching us on ustream.tv, then you can just type it into the little text box there off to the side, and then we'll get it passed through text messages to my nifty little phone here. you had something you wanted to say, Tim?
Yeah, you know, that last caller, it's very, to me, I feel very, you know, my heart goes out to him.
Yeah.
It's a poignant call. It demonstrates, obviously, the direct need that any person who's a patient has to have a regular supply of medicine without having to worry and stress over it, because the stress to Parkinson's patient just makes his disease that much worse.
And
more
it's
prevalent.
going, you know, the use of cannabis is going to slow the progression of that disease.
That's true.
So it's a real lifesaver to him.
Yes,
you know?
it
So
is.
He
Exactly.
has a
That's
desperate
right.
need for it, as
He
do
does.
multiple sclerosis patients and many other patients.
But it just you know, it touches directly on why there should be at least other options, more options, in my opinion, as many options as we can get for patients, so that they can have medicine. It's very important.
Well, we've got Miss Sarah Taylor here, and she's got this new book out, Pro Se Warrior. I know there were a couple of excerpts that you wanted to share with us. Sarah, you want to go ahead and share one of those excerpts now? We'll check out the other one a little bit later.
Okay, I guess first I'll just read you a little bit here. It's about the case of Paul Frontier, and he was a firefighter. And I'm really glad to hear about what's happening for the veterans, because it's pretty serious when someone loses their rank and gets stripped of all their medals and everything when they smoke marijuana as opposed to taking a pharmaceutical drug, you know. So
tragic.
it's, yes, and I think we need to change it. So this is a little bit of the book. I know I'm not very good in front of the camera. I'm better behind the camera, so excuse me for reading. The case of Paul Frontier. Paul's case is important for taxpayers and legislators alike. It is a worst-case nightmare, exemplifying politics over people and demonstrating how treacherous impact our conflicting laws have on the brave men and women who serve our country and sacrifice their lives for us. President Obama has asked the United States Department of Justice, US DOJ, to issue the memorandum to provide clarification and guidance to federal prosecutors in the states that have authorized the medical use of marijuana. This memo, however, does not address the most pressing issues. For example, current drug testing. Here I'm a dyslexic reading to you on TV, so bear with me. Current drug testing for marijuana is not scientifically accurate to time and date. Feds and states do not address off-duty marijuana use for our injured troops, firefighters, police, civil servants, and citizens. The ramifications of random and scheduled drug testing on the job, given inaccuracy of current available marijuana testing, leads to horrific loss of rights, income, pension, insurance, property, both real and personal, and can cause civil servants to go on welfare. And politics of marijuana between and amongst big pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies, the FDA, cities, counties, states, feds, unions, foreign relations, and treaties affects legislation. Failure to allow patients with pharmaceutical drug intolerance who have a state marijuana permit to purchase it anywhere in the U.S. or buy it online from Canada or otherwise, like other drugs approved by the FDA, is in fact discrimination. Laws and penalties favor patients using pharmaceutical drugs over patients using marijuana. We therefore single out a certain segment of our population, just as we continue to do in our justice system between cocaine and crack. Are we just pretending to have equal rights and equal protection under the law?
So that's a good segment there. So one of the things this book does is it lays out ways for people to be their own advocate.
Yes.
Free of being a lawyer, isn't that right? So what kind of different issues does it touch on? That?
Well, the first chapter is how to stop a foreclosure in less than a week. It's not that hard. Tell your friends and everyone. All you have to do is go to uscourts.gov. That's our government. That's our country. Click on the bankruptcy link. Go to the court in your area and take the debtor's class, which is about $100, and then you can file what's called a voluntary petition, and it puts an automatic restraining order on everyone.
And so what do you suggest for people who are undergoing criminal prosecution for cannabis or possession of that? Do you address that in Pro Se Warrior?
Well, I have actually a chapter on medical marijuana, And I have a bunch of information from NORML and also from the THC Foundation. And so there's some links there, but I asked people to go to NORML and, yeah, to the links where there are attorneys.
Okay. We have a phone call. Hello, caller. Welcome to our show. Hello, caller.
Hi, my name is John.
Hi, John.
What's up? First
You're
off,
on
I wanted
TV.
to say that I've been watching it since I got home from work tonight, and you all put on a great show. It's very informative and stuff. Thank you very much for the service.
Well, you're welcome. We're happy to do it. We're all proud to do it. No, it's not just us that are here in front of the camera. There are 4 camera people here in the room and another 4 people in the control room, all volunteering their time to do this every week. And like I said at the top of the show, this is show number 544. So we've been at it quite a while.
It's really cool, and I like the
Thank
banner
you.
in the back. Especially, it says legalize, regulate, and educate.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm not trying to plug myself. I'm working on a book, and I'm doing my part to try to educate. I'll leave it at that.
Great.
Anyways, the question that I had for you all was, what do you think of the way that it is portrayed in popular media, like movies, music, things like that? Do you think it's given a fair shot, or do you think it's insulted more, or shown unrealistically? I mean,
Well, I think all of those are true. Don't you think
I
that's
agree.
the way?
I
I
do.
mean, it receives all of
It's a
those.
mixed
Probably
bag.
more of them are derogatory, but still nowadays you're seeing more and more things that aren't so negative about marijuana in the movies and the media.
Well, you get the Cheech and Chong stigma. It's
yeah,
still
and that
out
thing
there.
Weeds on
Yeah.
Showtime. You know, I watched that for a couple of years,
Right.
but it's just too bizarre, and the things that happen are just so outlandish.
It's more
I
like
just-
meth than
well, it is a
weeds.
soap
or- yeah.
opera, too. You know, it has to be. I'm surprised they haven't had aliens land yet.
Yeah, didn't they have that happen? I think
I
they
mean,
came
from
down in some of those
space.
illegal aliens through the tunnels from Mexico. That was it.
I remember
Anyway.
something about the 3 6s, but it was like their number along the wall.
Right.
It's like it was the...
But you know, it really has set a number of standards when it comes to discussing marijuana in the media. So it's kind of participated and broke the ice, and now there's a lot of other things, more movies and various things out there that address it. So, you know, I'm not real happy with the way it's portrayed in the media, to be honest, but that's why this show's here. So we can try to portray it more the way we feel it is. One of the best natural resources for our environment. Could replace many energy sources such as petroleum, and we could use hemp seed oil. We could use hemp food. If we used hemp for fuel, the byproduct of food would feed the world's hungry and stop global warming, and provide a lot of benefits, including, I think you can say per acre, an acre of marijuana, and it's basically the same plant as hemp, regardless of some of the stories out there. It's the same genus of cannabis that's been changed, just the same way as dogs and horses and cats and cattle are a lot different than they first were when they first were domesticated. So are tomatoes, corn, and cannabis. Different varieties of those are available, and they diverge dramatically. But some are best for production of paper and fiber, and others produce buds and flowers. And so if you grow it for the flowers, you're going to get, according to a study out of the American Midland Naturalist published in Notre Dame, a study based out of University of Indiana at Urbana, that said that an acre of hemp can produce 8,500 pounds of hemp seed, and that will produce over 6 barrels of oil per acre and a byproduct of 6,000 pounds or 3 tons of food. At the same time, it produces 25 tons of hemp hurd fiber for paper and building material, the inner woody core of the plant, and the outer bark fiber called bast fiber, another 10 tons for canvas, rope, lace, and linen. So it could solve so many of our environmental problems, and that's one of the things we like to represent here on this show. Anyway, thanks for your call. We have a film clip now, a British film called The Magic Weed, and we'll be back in just a second after that and talk some more with Tim Pate and Sarah Taylor, so stay tuned.
In Jamaica, the Rastafarian religion advocated smoking cannabis. They called it ganja.
Herb is the sacrament of the Rastafari Church, and basically through studying the Bible, we understand that it's there for the healing of the nation. In other words, it can nourish the mind just as food nourishes the body. It's like a key that can open certain aspects of your mind, and the brain needs feeding just as the rest of your body does. But for me personally, it seems to tune you into a certain wavelength that you can't reach without it. Although I do understand that through certain meditations, one can achieve these heights without smoking herb or taking any other drugs. But in the 20th century, I personally don't have the time, so it's like a shortcut to get to this place to help you be creative. And another thing I find really interesting about weed is how through the smoking of it or trying to acquire it, it brings together people of different classes, backgrounds, cultures. And in bringing those people together, there's an exchange of ideas, and through that exchange, other things happen.
At the same time, cannabis was legalized in Holland. That's how Ben Dronkers was able to become the first legal producer of marijuana to become a millionaire.
Here we find different varieties that me and my colleagues, we tested out by once in a while looking at the plants and try them out. In that sense, it's a war where people can always look and go back to and say this variety had a certain smell or a certain aroma. Quality is very important, and it's the most important factor where we look at. Always people think also about quantities of material you can harvest, and of course it's very difficult to have a balance. You find plants with very large, big buds, and you find plants with smaller buds. But even the plants like this that have a very small bud is one of our basic plants we have for the breeding of many of the strong varieties that you can see on this side. That means that some of the strengths and some of the important potency we always try to bring back in one variety, and that is the variety that people buy in the shop. And that is the importance of good seed. Is like any farmer could know that that's the start, and then you end up with some good materials. The Sensi Seed Bank grows the best marijuana seeds in the world, I think, for many years. Also, we want to make the best hemp seeds from the world, and we're working very hard on that. For that, we made a new company that's called Hempflex, and Hempflex produced in the north of Holland on this moment, last year, 140 hectares of hemp, and coming year we want to go to 1,500 hectares. That is the minimum we want to do, and for sure later on we will have to do more. From that material we have produced last year, we're producing on this moment just the raw fiber and the wood materials. It comes out like that. And from the wood we have the plan to make cat litter, and actually the same things like people want to do in England. It's beautiful wood you can press from it, and also some composites like this pressed from fiber and wood. And very interesting, what I like, one of the things I like myself the most is the isolation material. It smells good, you can make it fireproof, and it's much better than all the glass fiber that is all in these living rooms out there. So hemp is the future.
Hemp growing depends directly on contracts. We have to sign first a contract with an industrial society through our Hemp Producers Federation. At this point, it becomes possible to grow hemp. Hemp sowing is made each year around May, and you harvest it around the beginning of September. In Le Mans in France, they produce hemp seeds which contains a very low toxical agents level. Hemp legalization is very precise and obliges producers to use varieties which have been tested and contain no drug. They must have not only a strong agricultural potential, but a very low THC rate too.
That was an excerpt from The Magic Weed, a show about cannabis that was produced in Britain back about 3 years ago. You can find it out there, The Magic Weed. A little excerpt. It's really a great video. It's got a couple extras on it that are pretty informative. Anyway, we have a caller who's been standing by. Hello, caller. Welcome back to the show.
Yes, hello.
Hi there.
Hi. I had a question about... You need to mute that.
Question about
I'm
what?
sorry. I had a question about quality control and how
That's the only
would
drug
be...
test we allow in our office, or quality control tests.
Excuse me?
I said that's the only kind of drug test we allow in our office, or quality control tests.
As far as
I would try.
the people that would procure for the dispensaries, would they be coming around to see whether it was organic? Could they give a certification? Is there any knowledge to that so far?
Yeah, well, they could definitely, I think, get a certification. I mean, here in Oregon, we have TILF certification. I am not sure about how open TILF is to that idea, so it would really be a function of that organization whether it wanted to grant organic cannabis grower certification. But I would guess they would do that. You know, more members, and it's legal and everything, and obviously should be a rapidly growing industry. But the state will audit and inspect the licenses. That much we know, and so they'll be testing. And basically, I think we'll see what we see down in California, where there's a pretty sophisticated grading system and pricing system based on that grading. And you know, obviously, patients will be looking for the best quality for the lowest price.
Yes, that was going to be my other question. Any idea what the wholesale and taxation levels would be?
Well, I think they say there's a 10% tax on producers and a 10% tax on the dispensaries, and that the producers can be commercial companies that only supply the state dispensaries. The dispensaries have to be nonprofits that are subject to public ownership and that other separate regulatory entity out there. That
was kind of half of the other end of the question. There was, do you need cards?
So the fees, I think, is that the license for a producer is $1,000 a year, and the license for a dispensary is $2,000 a year, and it's an annual license, and all the details have yet to be worked out. Just as with the medical marijuana law, there'll be administrative rules that are set, as it is with all laws, in fact, administrative rules that govern the way the state agency handles its regulatory authority. And there'll be an input process, and then they'll issue proposed rules, then there'll be hearings and an appeal process for people who don't like those rules. Then they're implemented, and then that's the way the agency runs according to those administrative laws.
Okay, and as you were saying, the dispensaries having to be in a commercial type zoning, do you believe that'll be the same with the growing facilities?
Oh yeah, I think it's required of both. Not 100% certain of that. Currently, you know, individual marijuana caregivers are not bound by that restriction, but these new commercial entities will be.
Okay, sounds good. And then I just had another question here. Does hemp fall under, is it going to fall under the same measure here as far as legalization?
No, it doesn't really. The dispensary initiative doesn't really address industrial hemp production.
Okay, and then what about everybody's concern?
However, the Oregon legislature did pass a hemp bill in the last legislative session that the governor signed into law, and so we have a hemp bill here in Oregon, but the only way to legally grow is to get a license to import the seeds from a French company that produces a special hybrid variety of cannabis that produces less than half of 1% THC. And those seeds will naturally vary, so you have to keep buying that seed. You can't produce your own seed for the next crop.
Interesting. Okay. Okay, and then I won't take up any more of your time, but...
All right, well, that was an interesting set of questions.
What about everybody's concern with the outdoor hemp crops and their outdoor cannabis crops and the cross-merging of the two?
Well, I actually worked in large cannabis fields in Switzerland. Cannabis was legal in Switzerland from 1999, or 97 actually, till 2002. And I worked there in 1998 and 1999. And there were hemp crops just a couple miles away from these big commercial cannabis fields. And really, there wasn't cross-pollination of any great degree. And so this one farm it was Cannabioland, and you can still find their website out there, cannabioland.ch. And so,
people going as far
yeah, it was a 25-acre
away.
field with 60,000 marijuana plants that ranged in size from 6 to 15 feet tall. And they sold it in, you could pick your own tree, so to speak, or you could get it already dried, or you could get it packaged and finished. And it was open to the public, too. So it was a wide open commercial enterprise. But the law changed in 2002. They don't allow that anymore. I have Tim Pate waving his hand over here.
Well, I remember when, I love these Amsterdam stories, but I remember they were testing downtown Amsterdam for the pollen count, and they were getting pollen count from the pollen from the plants in Afghanistan. So, if you're wanting to keep pollen away from your plant, there ain't no place on the planet that's going to be safe from something. It's just
But proximity is obviously going to make a big difference. Some little pollen will get through, that's the way of life. But I think that we don't have to seriously worry about it as long as the fields are separated by a small distance.
All right. Well,
all right. Thanks for that series of questions.
All your information. Thank you.
Have a good night tonight. If you have a question out there for us tonight, give us a call at 503-288-4448. That's 503-288-4448. We have a little 1-minute video clip here, a promo for the new movie out there, The Green Goddess. So stay tuned.
The following trailer contains real marijuana.
Legend has it that deep within the THC crystal of the marijuana plant, there lives a goddess. A goddess so incredible that meeting her will transform your life forever.
She's magnificent, glorious, beautiful, delicious.
I want to meet her.
You start with a strain like this, nurture her, worship her. When your mind is open, she will come.
What part of the island are you from?
Leader is arrested. 3 friends will travel halfway across the world, plant 25,000 marijuana plants, and harvest more organic ganja than you and all of your friends could smoke in 3 lifetimes. Whoa, that's a lot of pot.
You're from America? Yep. So you think you can just come over to Europe, grow some weed, and make a whole bunch of money? Doesn't work like that.
All I know is, after how some of y'all treated the son, the Lord felt the need to hide his daughter. And he hid her in the most sacred of sacred places.
They have only one chance to get it right and to meet one goddess. Would you like to meet the Green Goddess?
Well, just as we were talking a little bit ago about those fields of cannabis I worked in Switzerland, that film was filmed around those fields, and I'm an associate producer on that film, and I've got a little part in there, not exciting enough to be in the trailer, of course, but hopefully we'll see that come out. We've seen a few showings of it starting up, and it should be coming out later this year. There's a few things I want to announce very quickly. First of all, the Seattle Hemp Fest is coming up here in just a mere 4 weeks or so on August 21st and 22nd. That's the world's largest pro-marijuana event. It's coming up on August 21st and 22nd in Myrtle Edwards Park. That's a Saturday and a Sunday. So come out and be one of a crowd between 200 and 500,000 strong, stretching 1.5 miles down the park, and see hundreds of vendors, and we're proud to participate in that event as well as the THCF medical clinics. Also, the Hempstock Festival is coming up as well, and that comes up on September 11th and 12th, right along with the National Normal Convention. We'll be at the Governor Hotel on September 9th, 10th, and 11th. So we're happy to merge with the Normal and Normal National Convention. Here coming up, we'll have speakers from all over the country talking about cannabis as at our Hempstock Festival. The first day of the Hempstock Festival is the last day of the Normal Conference, so it'll be an interesting time. We'll be taking the R out of Portland, and you should stay tuned for more information on that. We have a caller, though. Hello, caller. Welcome to the show.
Yes, so I just got diagnosed with MS about 4 months ago, and I'm on bench probation, and I'm trying to get my green card, but before I go and apply, I was wondering if I could get my green card.
Yes, you can. In fact, I would think as an MS patient, your probation officer would be pretty supportive. You should tell them about it, that you're getting it, and that we have studies that show that marijuana or cannabis is the only thing shown to slow the progression of multiple sclerosis. So cannabis is needed by you and patients with multiple sclerosis and other neurodegenerative diseases. And so I'm sure if he's knowledgeable of that and given proof of that with scientific studies, or she, whoever the probation officer may be, that they'll acquiesce. But they certainly are allowed to. And that should be a great benefit to you.
All right, but I don't, since I'm on bench probation, I don't have a...
Oh, yeah, you don't even have to see him. Well, you don't have anything to worry about then.
Okay,
you're allowed to.
That's what
yeah, bench probation, you don't have to check in and see him. It'll be over probably in a year or less.
Yeah, I got like 4 months left on it.
Yeah, no, it won't affect it. You don't have to talk to anybody. You can just get your license, and it won't have any effect on it whatsoever. The only thing is if you were convicted of a selling or cultivating cannabis, manufacturing cannabis or another drug, then it would limit the amount you can possess, and you'd have to name someone else as your caregiver or grower. But only if that had happened since January 1st, 2006. If it happened prior to that, you don't have to go through that.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. Great question. So, Sarah, you've got this book, Pro Se Warrior, and you were saying there are a couple things out there that you really like our viewers to know specifically.
Oh, yes.
You want to go ahead and highlight those?
Okay. One of the things I wanted people to understand is that patients, seniors, people with disabilities, the poor, our veterans, their widows, and their children are trapped between the common administrative control of agencies who can commit unconstitutional acts upon them. And what that means is that if you are, for example, a senior and someone is abusive to you, then if you were to blow the whistle on them, that employee of Social Security or the vocational rehabilitation can cut you off food stamps, can cut you out of housing, can put you on the street. This is our seniors and our disabled, our veterans. And so what, I think in Oregon people would want to know this, that there is a certain segment of our population that is in fact trapped like slaves. And if they were to complain about it, then they can be harmed, and then the agency, Voc Rehab, Social Security, Centers for Independent Living, can claim sovereign immunity, and so they have no consequence.
So, Sarah, if someone wanted to get a hold of your book here, Pro Se Warrior, you had a site with Yahoo? Where is that?
Well, it's going to be at prosewarrior.com, and you can spell it just like you would spell prose, P-R-O-S-E, warrior, W-A-R-R-I-O-R.com. And in the meantime, until the site goes up, because it's taken a lot of money and time, You can send an email to prosewarrior@yahoo.com, and then I can tell you how you can buy the book right now for $50 in print, or the PDF for $25. And soon, when it's online, you'll be able to even buy a chapter for $4.99, like the chapter Compensation, which shows how to win a workman's comp case.
We've got to wrap it up. We're down to
Sorry.
just about 2.5 minutes left. No problem there. This is Sarah Ann Taylor with the book Pro Se Warrior. Pro se is the Latin phrase, basically means defending yourself or for yourself. And so we are going to be back next week. If you're out there and you need to find or know someone who needs to help find a doctor who can help them get qualified for medical marijuana, we have a network of doctors across the country. Just give us a call, toll free, from anywhere in the USA at 1-800-723-0188. That's 1-800-723-0188. If you're here in the Portland area, you can call us at 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606. And we're working to completely end adult marijuana prohibition, restore industrial hemp, and help medical marijuana patients. We have a petition out there we'll be launching for 2012 to completely legalize marijuana. But stay tuned. So that's the end of our show tonight. You can tune in next week for show number 545, but we're going to go out on the music of Mr. Tim Pate and Brian Whitecloud. Thank you. Good night. Restore hemp. Restore hemp. See you next week, folks.